All right, excellent. So really have an exciting panel today, and want to give all the panelists a chance to do just 30 seconds about kind of what you're doing in voice, and kind of why is it exciting? Like what sort of really key thing is you're looking at?
I'm Brandon Kaplan with Skilled Creative. So we're a emerging technology creative agency based here in New York, focused on voice. So we're really fortunate to work with a lot of really different great brands, helping them to kind of enter the space. And that's what excites us most, is that we all kind of feel like web developers in the late 90s, app developers in the 2007, 2008, and helping brands to identify where they can carve out a space in this channel is really exciting. And ourselves kind of searching for those nooks and crannies of creative opportunity are what excites us the most.
Doug Robinson, CEO of Fresh Digital Group. We started as a mobile agency. We've done a lot of emerging tech. How do we put first-to-market products? How do we create things that a lot of people don't know how to? And then how do we help brands kind of escalate and elevate their thinking on what the consumer really wants? We've deployed a few hundred voice skills into the ecosystem, and so we think that we hopefully know something on how this thing is going to roll out, but we think about it from an ecosystem play, what Will was talking about, because it really matters on how you think about your customer experience, how do you put voice at the center of that, and how do you really try to understand the behavior change that's happening.
Hello, I'm Shilp Agarwal. I'm co-founder and CEO of Blutag. Blutag is a SaaS platform that helps retailers deliver voice shopping experiences for their customers. Our primary customer that we work with is retailers and brands, the ones that want to extend their shopping capabilities with voice and deliver that to their customers.
I'm Claire Mitchell, director on the VaynerSmart team at VaynerMedia, which is our emerging technologies group. I'd say the thing I'm most excited about right now in voice is coming up with new paradigms and frameworks for designing so that we get away from this sort of linear flow chart way of getting conversations to become a reality, and creating more modular systems that replicate the way that we interact with each other and have conversations.
All right, great, thank you. So we have behind on the screen, just send questions at botsandai.com, and periodically we'll go through and we'll pick questions from the audience to go through. So the first question, I think, where are we in the hype cycle of voice? Like, everyone's familiar with the curve and people put funny things on it, but where do you think we actually are now?
I mean, I don't know if we're in a hype cycle. I think what's very real is the distribution, right? The sheer distribution and the weight that the platforms have put behind. I think we've proven out, as Brett mentioned, that there are those killer apps and those core functionalities. Similar to the iPhone had core functionalities that people became familiar with. And what we're searching for, and we're starting to explore more every day as features unravel for us to use, is what are those true utilitarian and creative functionalities we can create for brands. So I wouldn't say we're in a hype cycle. I think there's a lot of inside baseball where we're kind of hyping each other up. I don't think anybody outside of the industry is feeling a hype cycle. I think people are kind of poking around and saying, like, what can we do here? And it's up to everyone in this room to figure out what can we build to prove to the community outside of our own little chamber here that this is something that you can do more experiences.
Nice, Brandon. Nice. I like to think that we're in that moment where we just have to create the best use cases, right? And it's kind of like what Will was saying is, China's already kind of making that happen, so it's kind of up to us, whether it's on the retail side, on the cool creative side, tying in social for better frameworks and conversational design. I think we're all looking to create the use cases and catch up with what the rest of the world is doing. Some of the best use cases right now are coming out of India, they're coming out of Canada, they're coming out of Ireland, they're coming out of London. So I think brands have been a little slow to move towards adoption, but it's kind of what Brett said. If the consumer's there, it's going to have to happen, and the consumers are there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what they said, that we really are not in a hype cycle. I think what happens is when you're in this whole ecosystem and you're on the inside, you kind of are in this bubble where you actually can see a little bit more of where this thing is headed, and from the consumers from the outside, they hear a lot about it, and as Brett was saying, that a lot of the articles they're starting about voice and AI, and it's more of understanding of what we need to do. It's about the context of what does it take to get started, so I don't believe there's any hype cycle. I think we're at the stage where it's really real now, and it's just a matter of understanding as to what, for a retailer, if we look at our context, as to what's the starting point, and what is going to get them started. So.
I think that we're sort of at a peak of the first phase of excitement. Automated speech recognition has gotten to a point where we can talk to inanimate objects and they detect what we're saying and can respond. But one thing that we're missing from that is comprehension, and that requires a little bit more of contextual understanding. So I think we're coming to a point where the pressure is on for designers, developers to create experiences that are more robust and that are more engaging.
All right, great. So sometimes when you come into a new technology, you have kind of a preconception or some expectation, and as you get more into it, it just gets totally shattered, and you're like, wow, how did I ever think this? So did you have any moment like that when you first started in voice, you had some idea of what to expect, and then based on some experience, you ended up with a very different feeling?
Well, I mean, I think, so we made a few skills around fight songs. And the thing that I think that's really interesting about voice, and it goes back to kind of what Will was talking about, behavior and all the data that we've already looked at, but one of the reasons we wanted to make these fight songs is we were like, oh, I'm in college, it's Saturday, we're pre-gaming, we want to hear our fight song, right? And then we're going to go to the game. Well, what we realized was in the basketball season is when people really were using it. Why? Because my friend's over my house, we have a commercial, our team's winning or playing well, and that's a better use case than what we thought it would be. And so I think what's interesting about voice is it's often teaching us, because of new behaviors and new ways to create experiences, on what makes more sense from the consumer side. And I think that's obviously helpful for brands overall.
And for us, I think just because we're still at a very nascent point in the kind of development of the technology, things that we as an agency want to do with our clients that we all get really excited about, just realizing that there's certain things that we can hack around, we can custom build, but we're certainly living within, I wouldn't call them limitations, but the environment that the platforms have built for us. So we're only either allowed to, by policy or by feature, able to do certain things within the platform. So just making sure that we're aware of kind of what's doable today and how far can we push the creativity in that, I would say has been a really big learning for us, and making sure that we're kept abreast of like what are the newest features, being on beta programs, and stretching that as much as we can.
Yeah, I think for us, it's not more about what didn't go, but I think it's more about just knowing that too much customization at this stage, we felt that it doesn't make sense. I think it's more about from our side, if we talk to the retailers and brands, they have a lot of ideas what they want to do with this thing, and I think it's important to kind of step back a little bit and almost make them understand a little bit that these are the use cases that currently make sense, and these are the ones that are a good starting point, and trying not to overbuild it is something that we've learned. We did start initially trying to do a lot of custom personalization stuff where it was focusing on that particular retailer's needs, but then realizing that it's more important to just actually talk to them and explain to them that these are the things that make sense today, and kind of take those steps, because it is a progression as to how you need to get your voice AI platform going, how you need to make sure that the understanding is there, what people are doing, and kind of just taking that. So I think that's really helped us.
I think more than surprising, it's exciting to observe people have this light bulb moment when they realize the profound impact that these voice-first interfaces will have on their future and future generations. We do a lot of educational sessions on state of the space for clients, and when we start talking about this not being confined to smart speakers, but voice assistants being distributed into all sorts of other contexts, whether it's automotive or spaces or other devices, there's a realization that this isn't just going to be novelty for playing music and things, but it's going to really enhance the way that we interact with digital information. And the other side is when we talk to people that have kids and they have an Alexa or Google Home in their living space. The kids are growing up. There's an entire generation that's growing up learning how to speak to computers before they learn how to type. And so there's going to be an expectation for this new generation that's growing up that every physical object has some sort of digital layer to it, whether it's being able to talk to it and get a response, or augmenting with some additional information through a screen. So I think that's a really interesting thing to witness.
Great. So that kind of leads us into kind of when voice leaves the home. And Claire, I know you have a background previously in automotives and IoT spaces. Like, what are some exciting use cases that you think are on the horizon that aren't just tied to a smart speaker or just holding your phone?
So augmented audio reality, or audio augmented reality, however you want to say it, is super exciting. When you think about being able to walk around a new city and get a guide right in your ear that's interactive, very, very cool opportunity for things there. For the automotive space, we are starting to see some really interesting applications for daily use, that, like checking your calendar or things like that, sending an email from the car. I'm excited about the possibility for applications when you're in the car for longer periods of time. So maybe you're going on a road trip and you want to have your route rerouted based on a sort of historical interest or a music interest, and get this interactive, educational, entertaining experience through voice.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the auto, I think there's a good amount of that needs to be done around the entertainment aspect of it. Being in the car for a longer period of time, I think keeping yourself entertained I think there's a huge opportunity. I think that there's a lot more that could happen in that. The amount of time people spend in a car in this country is just incredible. And what they, it really is, if you really think about it, you're sitting in a car going to work and you really are just not doing anything except for looking at the road. And that there's just so much more. I think people who are, thinking of new ways, I really think thinking about what you can do with that dead time in their drive is, there's a lot of different things that are opportunities. Shopping, one of them. So
Shopping, always. I'm interested in education, and is there a possibility to change even the political stuff that's going to come out here over the next 18 months, right? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of candidates vying for different spins and time and being top of mind. I think that could be really interesting, especially in the car, because we are just sitting there. So if I'm not shopping because I just left sugar and it's like, oh, Alexa, can you order the sugar? And it shows up tomorrow or in 2 hours. What other stuff? Can you have like your kid on the way to school and like, let's go over your homework? And could you be doing educational kind of homework reviews? I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, there's a slide that we used to use in pitch decks. I'm like 100% sure it was a voice bot data point. Thanks, Brett. And it was a chart that showed peak usage times of the platform. And there was this huge spike in the morning, and there was this huge spike in the afternoon into the early evening, and we would be in pitches with clients saying, this is a really exciting opportunity. We called it gray space, right? This is when you're competing with Instagram. This is when you're competing with other things that people fill these kind of dead times with. I'm stepping out of the shower, I'm getting home after work and throwing my keys down. So we said, let's work with you to fill those gray spaces. And now with automotive and with hearables, we're going to see that chart fill in, I think. And that opens up a whole opportunity to think about just more. Like, where can your brand, your organization add value and interject yourself and compete with Instagram and garner that attention from them? And in the car, it's an exciting opportunity because it's such a captive audience. There's no other place where you have such a non-distracted, captive audience. And so we think a lot about, longer-term experiences, entertainment, education, all of that. So very exciting.
Which really goes to like moments, right? Like we're going to start. We've been working on mobile moments for a few years, and so voice moments are probably going to happen. I mean, they're already happening, but we'll be able to start defining them around different time frames to do certain things.
And car is one area where you're not competing with mobile. So you actually have that all to yourself. So
great. What's sort of something that you can make a pitch to a brand and say like, hey, you need to get on this now, or what are you going to miss out on versus doing it later? Like, is there any sort of land grab situation like with early domains, or is it going to be too crowded? Like, what is it that makes now the moment?
There's no too crowding, first of all. There's no too crowding. If anything, we all know that brands are being pretty slow. So, I mean, obviously, if this is the technology that is the most transformational next to mobile or even greater, right? Because the reality is, you know, as humans, mobile was our move to a single device, but voice, as we're just talking about, is the move to all of our devices. So if it's kind of that big a deal, you probably should check it out, just for, you know, basic thinking. But beyond that, I mean, obviously, you want to learn. Partly what Brandon was saying is how quickly it's moving. You want to learn how to play in the space sooner than later. Like, this isn't one of those things that, and that's what brands have been doing, is they're kind of sitting back being like, oh yeah, I mean, my kids talk to it every day, but I just use it for weather, so what do I care? And like, that's a little ridiculous from a brand perspective. So, I mean, you probably should get it now.
I agree with the point about learning. I think the thing to lose is time to experiment. Right now is a great time to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then on the other side, it would be establishing a sonic identity, which a lot of folks are still not thinking about. I think when we think about when smartphones dropped over 10 years ago, a lot of people knew that a mobile strategy was going to be required at some point, and still today we have a lot of large companies that can't get their website to look right on a smartphone. So I think being in early to experiment, to learn from, and to establish a presence is reason enough.
Yeah, I think there's a huge early mover advantage when it comes to for brands, because I think same point, echoing the same point, that there's just the amount of learning that you need, and especially voice being so different. It's not as templatized as a website or a mobile app is. It's not a menu structure where you can just, replicate a menu structure that works. Voice is going to be different for every brand. The kind of, experience that you provide is very different. And even when it goes to when it goes to even shopping, I keep saying this example again and again. When you walk into a store, the sales rep really asks you just one question, and it's like, how can I help you? At that point, you're not really giving them a menu structure. You're really asking them, what do you need? What can I help you with? I think the same thing is expected from brands. And the more time you have to kind of learn and experiment, like she said, I think it's a huge opportunity missed if they don't do it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, just in the last 3 years, brands going from zero awareness to everyone has a voice task force or someone focused on voice, or their agencies asking about voice. The brands are now really excited about it, but the things that we talk to them about that get their kind of eyes to open and go, oh my God, I didn't understand you could do that, is, for us, a lot of the conversations on voice SEO. So we've proven that discovery is a challenge, and having people remember the name of your experience is a challenge. Brandless invocation is going to be a major thing, and Amazon and Google are working hard at their own solutions towards that. But voice SEO is very exciting, and to build on the kind of like data learnings, Will mentioned this, like this is an iterative experience, and we prove with all of our clients that making sure this isn't a let's build and launch and like good to see you later. It's build, launch, check the data monthly, weekly, daily, iterate, change, and you see your KPIs continuing to improve. It's the learnings of that data and the iteration is very key.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely super important, and it's come up from a few of you. What are some of those things that you check? What are the KPIs that matter, and what are some techniques you've used to really make them move in the direction you want?
I mean, for us, because we don't work in a very specific field, right? If you're in commerce, transactions, intention of transactions, obviously very key. For us, we work with a diverse set of clients, so it depends on what they're looking for, but in general, we're checking unique visitations, repeat visits, retention. We just check intention to transact with us in some way, whether that's us grabbing your email, your phone number, sending you an offer, buying something. So what's the engagement level, and then how well are we converting you to a call to action that's important to the brand that we happen to be working with. We're less concerned with the traditional stickiness. Like everyone thinks, oh my God, people aren't coming to my skill or my action every single day. They don't have to. Like for you to get the return out of your experience, it could be once. It could be once a quarter. It could be once a month. So it differs for brands, but those are some.
Yeah, I think it varies by category or demographic, but I keep thinking of sonic identity, but we'll get back to that. I'm like, yeah, audio branding. But we used to really like retention because retention was so low for so long, and we wanted to really crack that early. We kind of feel that discovery is going to get easier, so I think I at least feel like we're kind of through most of the pain points of discovery. I just kind of sense that like it's our job, or it's the brand's job, or it's the social, or it's the marketing, or it's every other piece of what's bringing that together to create that discovery mechanism. So I'm a little less concerned about that. But retention, if it's not solving a very specific problem, or we want to create that daily pattern and ritual, I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think as far as the KPIs for us, I think the initial goal right now is to just bring a lot of data in, just getting usage. We're not planning on doing anything, KPI-wise, even transactions. The number of transactions is not really our KPI right now because it is new, and we're learning along with all the retailers that are on the platform as well. So it becomes extremely important to understand, look at the data and see what is it, and like I think Brett was saying that. When people say that, or Will was saying that there's no killer app, but there is killer apps, right? So like when you look at checking the weather, that is a killer app. People are doing that again and again, and that's a behavior that people are not able to go back to a phone for or a screen for. So what are the killer behaviors within our skills, right? If you have 6 different things that the skill can do, what is that one killer use case that makes them come again and again? Because that's really all you need. You need one aspect in the skill that makes you come in again and again, and then you can navigate them and you can work with them to kind of get that on there. So I think it becomes really important to find out for you as a brand, what is that one aspect that is the most engaging and that is increasing that loyalty to bringing you back. And I think we focus a lot on that.
Yeah, for us, it definitely depends on the type of experience that we're designing. For instance, we have a game out we launched for NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and the content is updated every week. So when we see folks coming back to the skill, then we know that we've done a pretty good job because they're enjoying the experience, they're coming back. In other cases, it may be enough that we're having deeper engagement. But often it's more the qualitative feedback that we get either through reviews or through user testing that is the most informative on how we either iterate or otherwise change things. We have a heads-up skill for the Ellen DeGeneres show and found through reviews that people wanted more content, and through that we were able to partner with Amazon to launch their feature that allows payment for content within skills. And so it's really interesting to see that user feedback in the reviews because it can be really informative.
So Doug really wants to know, can you tell us about sonic identity and what does that mean to a layperson in terms of business value or spending time on it or like the future value of it?
Audio branding is the future of, in a voice-only world, which is where we're living or want to get to, audio branding is going to be critical. So the sound of your brand, the fact that no one is actually thinking about sonic identity is why I'm like, she's absolutely right. It's really, if I'm a brand and I make a voice skill, and I'm, Geico or Farmers Insurance or whatever, we have sounds that exist. Well, they're not leveraging them. They're not creating new ones. They're not making it easier for that 12-year-old who's already gone voice only and has stopped typing to really connect with a brand based on its sonic identity. That's what sonic identity is.
Okay, Claire.
Yeah, so some brands have started to do a good job, and it's almost a return to the days of radio when a jingle was really important. But we're talking to a lot of clients that may have a presence in audio first and also visual components, but also retail spaces, and having a sound that's immediately recognizable, that's consistent through all of those touch points is going to be increasingly important when we have audio first experiences, particularly because listing out things in whether it's Alexa's voice or synthetic voice or otherwise, listing out things by words is going to be really cumbersome. So if we can have an immediately recognizable sonic identity, we might not even need to use the brand's name in some cases.
It can make the whole exchange more efficient. And I mean, it is a jingle at the end of the day. Why doesn't your brand have a jingle in the voice world?
All right. So Shilp, I know you've done some work with kind of brick and mortar brands in the retail space, creating voice skills, and initially that may not be like an obvious connection, but what was kind of the hook there to get them interested, and what have been some of those results?
I think when you look at brick and mortar, right, I think you have to just go back. It goes back to kind of what their pain points are, right? So brick and mortar, not pain points, are kind of what their number one goal is. So brick and mortar essentially needs more foot traffic, right? So is there a way to increase foot traffic using these voice assistants? And that's kind of where you have to focus on. So for, basic examples would be, let's say you want to schedule some styling appointments. There's a couple of boutiques we work with, and they have customers who regularly schedule styling appointments. If you make that a little bit more convenient for them to be able to do that over a voice assistant, it helps them get more of those appointments, and we've seen those results. We've actually seen an increase in the number of people who are repeatedly scheduling styling appointments because of the fact that it's very convenient. They don't have to make a phone call. I mean, not that making a phone call in a boutique is going to be really hard because it's not you don't have to be on hold for that long. But I think it just still adds that level of convenience, and just not having to call and just say that, okay, I want to schedule a styling appointment on Tuesday. It gives you 2 slots and you schedule it. So, brick and mortars, again, looking at the kind of the winning use cases of what actually is getting used again and again, those work really well. So, I mean, that's kind of how we've started, taking a few of those use cases. And most of the people have, brick and mortars, and they have an online presence. So I think it's very rare that, we're working only with somebody who has a brick. So it really is a combination. I think it just goes same as a mobile experience would be. You can check your order status, whether you bought it in a store and they're shipping it to you, or you've ordered something online, you want to go pick it up. All those things, they're a part of, the same kind of omni-channel experience, really, that you have to focus on. But looking at different aspects of what's important for customers or a merchant to make it easy for their consumers, whether it's checking the order status, whether it's going and scheduling an appointment, or whether it's just finding out if the item is ready for pickup. I think those are the different types of things that we've looked at.
So, I mean, if you have a voice-only experience, if you don't have a screen, you can't kind of click on a calendar or start looking at it. So is there kind of a need for more natural language processing where someone says, oh, I'm free Saturday between 3 and 5, and it'll find a match? Like, how fancy are these? I mean,
that could be done, but I think with voice right now, what's important is that you just cannot have a conversation too long. You can definitely do that, but that's going to require you to have a conversation that has 6-7 turns, and I think that's something that you're going to lose people there. So at this stage, the way our product would work is that, I'm looking for an appointment on Thursday. It gives you 3 different options, and you can either pick one or you don't. And that's really, you have to keep it as simple as 2 turns, and then you end it. But that can be done without a screen, but I think at that point you lose the customer.
Okay. Has there been any technique that kind of used to work well, like when you came out of the gate, and then for whatever reason, people's taste change or the technology changed, and it's just not working anymore? Like, is there something that you're finding? Don't do this. We used to do it work, but don't do this anymore.
I guess what I would say is very, very early. What we're at, like 80,000 Alexa skills right now. A lot of them are fact skills or things like that. But early on, there was a novelty behind it. I think whenever a brand came out with an experience, Amazon and Google would heavily promote it and say, come check this out. People would engage with it. It was heavily promoted. And for us, we have an internal kind of rule of don't be self-indulgent creatively. I think some of the early experiences maybe were a little self-indulgent creatively, trying to explore the corners of creativity, and we had good completion rates. I think self-indulgence now results in an incredibly small completion rate. To your point, you've got to get to the point, get to where they want. So I think we have to be much more efficient in our creative design these days, and that's only going to continue to progress, be smarter.
I mean, I just kind of think about what both of them are saying around getting to the point, and also how long are you willing to engage? I think what's interesting is we create the pattern of behavior, then that gives you more creative runway to then, okay, well, yesterday I just wanted you to ask about the weather, and now maybe you can ask about the weather tomorrow or this evening or next week in the Hamptons, because I see on your calendar that you're traveling. So I think that we're moving to kind of leverage some of the things that, on one hand, let's step away from just a novelty. On the other hand, let's be very succinct and to the point, but let's also, again, change that behavior and move you into new ways of working and talking to the device.
Yeah, I think, again, just going back to our retail scenario, our initial process was that we wanted to give the consumer everything. We wanted to have them go through the exact, like they should be able to find everything on the store, whether it's 300,000 SKUs, how can we figure out a way where they can browse the whole product catalog? And that doesn't work. I think what you have to focus on is that you have to just, follow that 80-20 or even a 90-10 rule, saying that, there's 80% of your sales are happening with like 20% of your products. How do you make sure that you facilitate those 80-90% of the results? And that's what you have to do. You just don't have the luxury of the kind of real estate you have on a screen where you can show them 50 different options if they ask for a product. So I think focusing on the, starting with just what's the most used, what's the, whether it's products, whether it's, different experiences, and just focusing on that and doing that really well is I think, a good way to start.
I would say two things. One, we are currently used to a paradigm where we have a skill or an action, give us 3 options and ask us what we want to do, and then we tell them what we want to do, and then it's 3 options, what do we want to do? I think we're going to see a less linear way of filtering people to the answer that they want, and hopefully allow for more open-ended conversation over the next, hopefully, 6 months to a year, 5 years. The other thing is we currently get away with having a couple of variations for responses so that it's not monotonous. So we just change up the wording slightly in order for it to sound a little bit more conversational and not robotic. I think we'll need much more content to make things sound dynamic. And that doesn't mean that the engagement needs to be deeper, because we need to be concise. But I think just having more variation in responses, whatever the response is going to make things feel more natural and more inviting.
And conversations will help with that. So Alexa just launched conversations, but also, like, I think what you're saying about the linear piece is I think thinking linear got us to this point, but moving forward, we need to really think about how authentic conversations are and really start building in that lane a little bit better.
So I want to get back to kind of the experimentation angle, kind of dig in more. So Claire, what are some things you do to experiment? Like, can you literally, like a web page A/B test in voice? Can you segment people? Like, how much info do you actually have to work with to do those things?
Yeah, so things have changed over the past year to 2 years. We've gone through a couple of different iterations of the way that we like to prototype things. Prototyping is extremely important, whether it's using it for user testing or getting stakeholder buy-in from our clients, from other users, from our team. You really have to give a demonstration of what that experience is going to be like beyond a flowchart in order to help people realize what that experience is going to be ultimately. Right now, we're really excited about some of the tools that Adobe has released with XD, which allows you to prototype voice experiences for multiple devices, and it feels like you're speaking to Alexa. So those kinds of things really help us to A/B test really quickly without coding anything. Also, blueprints can be an effective way if you're doing something very simple, but it's really important to be able to realize something in some fashion before building anything.
Yeah. For us, I think the biggest, we just do a lot of focus groups. I think that's really the only way to really get because people talk differently. Everybody speaks in a different fashion. So what we've noticed is that regardless of our product being a very repeatable product, so we don't do custom experiences, right? Everything we do is like, okay, these are the 6 different types of things you could do as a retailer or a brand. And but again, depending on the product catalog and depending on the category that they're serving, their experiences are very different. So for us to use any kind of a tool might not be that helpful because the result's going to be the same. So I think in that point, we still realize that if there's focus groups done, it's amazing how different those results are compared to something that's templatized. So I think we've seen that that's really the ultimate way to really test and experiment.
I'm really thinking about virility and how, what is the moment this year where we're like, oh my God, you got to go check that out, and it becomes super, super viral. So when you think about last year, I think Brett brought it up around Westworld, or you look at the Mr. Robot skill, those were kind of whoa, we're on our way to doing some really cool stuff. So I think for us, it's kind of taking a lot of our learnings and seeing if we can piece together something that's super interesting and it goes super viral.
Yeah, I would just say user testing is really key. We used to do user testing before launch in the early days, and now we're doing user testing at multiple touch points along the ideation and development step. And then, building on learnings the entire way. We tell a lot of our clients, don't work with us so we can tell you what to do. Work with us so we can tell you what not to do. We've made enough mistakes 3 years ago or 2 years ago that we can have learnings from that today.
And you guys do. I mean, you guys have done a really good job of thinking about prototyping for a long time. So I would assume that you figured that out at a high level. But yeah.
There's certainly a lot of concerns coming up with privacy every once in a while. There's a new story about oh, Alexa listened to me when it shouldn't, or said something. Do you think this will be disruptive to this space? Do you think it'll just kind of blow over and people won't think about it anymore? What are your thoughts on kind of the privacy aspect of voice? And is it any different than text? Is there something more meaningful about the voice?
I just think it's part of a larger conversation. I think everyone is hyper aware of all the conversations around privacy. Some people are much more tapped in than others. Some people are very concerned. Some people just want good user experiences. I think it's just kind of thrown into a lot with everything else. People are ironically more fearful of voice devices in some instances because it has a conversational nature, where in reality, our phones and the apps in our phones that are listening to our conversations are scraping more data about us than our Alexas and our Google Assistants. So I think there's a bit of a miseducation about the level of severity of the privacy issue in voice. It's just a bigger discussion in our opinion.
Massive miseducation. I mean, anyone that knows anything knows that your phone and Facebook have been listening to you for, 5 to 10 years. I mean, how many times do you go oh, let's go look at that Ford, and then some car ad pops up on your phone and people go, I don't know how that happened. We're so beyond it, but it's kind of we were saying earlier is we're at this moment where whatever the backlash around data and you owning my data and GDPR and all that, the reality is we have to redefine the rules of privacy for us to do a better job of creating a better product for you, a better customer experience, or a better way for you to interact with me as a brand. And if that's you giving up a little privacy, or you thinking that I'm listening to you all the time, although I'm not listening to you all the time, but even if I was, I'm just here to make things better for you, right? Because I'm trying to make better experiences. I think we have to kind of, as a group, get over that hump. So if 40% of the population doesn't want a voice device, great, then that group will be 5 years behind as technology moves right past them.
Yeah, I think most of the people actually don't. The less and less people are caring about the privacy, when it comes to, is it listening to me, right? I think if it's, yes, identity theft and things like that, nobody wants that, right? But I think the same thing about, you drive, I'm driving in the car the other day with my wife and kids, and we were trying to plan a vacation. We're we'll take them to this Kalahari resort or whatever. And then she gets, hours later, she gets an email with Kalahari resort coupons. And she's like, these things are listening to us. Everybody's listening to us. Alexa's listening to us, and with this, what the truth is that people don't realize that there's so much data out there about you that. The truth is that Alexa is not listening to you, right? And it doesn't need to. And that's the scary part, that there's enough data out there that it actually knew before you even spoke about it that you're going to go to Kalahari Resort, right? So, and I think that's how people need to think about it, that there's already enough data. You clicked at something and you don't realize you did. You checked out some website, you don't realize. You typed something in a Google search, you don't realize. All that data is getting you to target you, but no, they're not listening to you. Like I said, even if they were, that's not the reason why you're getting that ad, so.
I think it comes down to preference of convenience or relevance over sharing some data, and the pressure is on for content creators, experience creators of any sort, whether it's voice or any other platform, to, if they're going to ask for some sort of data, be very clear about why they're using it and what value they're going to provide in exchange. And then the other piece is as long as users and consumers and audiences are put in a position of control, so you can turn off the microphone, you can unplug the thing, you can not buy it, then I think we're empowered to make our own decisions about it.
So I think you raise a good point about kind of making clear the trade-off. Have you seen like a good example or a good pattern of a skill explaining why it needs to get something, or asking for it in a way that's kind of non-threatening?
Any of the ones that are going to deliver food to your doorstep, there's like a clear value proposition. Give me your address, your credit card number, link your account, I will give you a pizza. I think there's probably still some clunkiness around the account linking for all skills and actions, but anything that's going to deliver something to your doorstep, there's a clear value proposition there.
Yeah, I think the location is, pretty much, I think, very relevant for most of the things. I think, when it comes to just knowing the location, finding the closest store, or, if I'm trying to just even order food and through Alexa and I want to know what the closest Domino's is, I think location is something that is a real clear value prop. At that point, phone number, email, those are something people might not want to necessarily share or need to share, but I think a couple of location-based ones are pretty much the only ones.
I think healthcare is going to be really interesting. I think we're kind of at the very, very tip of like adherence and like, did you take your drugs today? No. Did your dad take his drugs today? We'll call him and figure out why he didn't take his drugs today. I think those lanes will be really interesting on how it affects health and then moves into insurance and lots of other stuff. So.
Yeah, I agree. All of the heavily regulated industries, healthcare, finance, banks, credit cards, they've been kind of first to really heavy-handed asks. So there's a lot of learnings there. It's important though.
So we've got kind of a lot of coverage in terms of different types of businesses that have been on voice from your experiences on the panel. So can you give some examples of a technique that is useful or works for one category but does not for another one? Like what is some differentiation advice you could give depending on like the type of business that's trying to use voice?
I would just say length of experience, right? If you're an entertainment brand, a news brand, it certainly makes sense to engage someone in a more drawn-out, interactive experience. If I'm a brand, a CPG company, or I'm trying to have a very pointed conversation with you, shorten that up a little bit. So contextually, based on what you're trying to achieve, should you have a very long, repetitive engagement with somebody, or should you kind of get right to the point, answer their question, and hope that you've provided enough value that they want to transact with you?
We just go vertical, demographic, audience, KPI, and then work back from there.
Yeah, I think it really depends on, again, going back to just retail, it depends on the kind of product it is. How much information does somebody need before they have to make a decision or just go to the next step? It's different for different products, different categories, and different kind of brands. So I don't think everything works in the same fashion for everybody. There's an iteration you have to do, and then it's going to work for everybody. So.
I guess I would say there's more consistency than differences when you think about trying to make an experience that's user-led and user-first. So we've worked with JP Morgan on skills that give you investment advice and append very deep, rich reports on market trends. And then we've worked with Lego on alarms that are spoken by characters that give you a prompt for building something for the day. And in either case, they're extremely different experiences, but the point is to get in the mindset of the user and get them the information or content that they want as quickly as possible and in the most convenient way.
All right, my last question is, what is it that I haven't asked that you really feel like the audience has to know, like this will make the voice world a better place if only these people here right now know, and everyone watching on YouTube later? What is that one thing?
I think it was audio branding.
I would just say we're very early. There's a lot of momentum, but there's still so much space, tip of the iceberg conversation. If you're thinking about getting to the space, get in and try and create something that's kind of like industry shifting, channel shifting. So there's so much opportunity still. Please get in and create. It's a very small community, and once you're in it, people are very supportive and they want people to succeed. So get in and start building.
Yeah, I think, I think we're going through the same cycle, and I always talk about that. We definitely are going through the same cycle as we did in early days of e-commerce. Where first you had to create a website, it was clunky. People came who knew about you, came and used it. Then came things like SEO, where you would optimize your website for those keywords. If you were optimized enough, you'll get discovered, and people will then interact with your brand. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, with a little bit of that discovery that started happening with the implicit invocation and things like that. And I think soon, it's not far from when we start seeing paid voice search. And anybody who wants to get into this place, like Randa said, this is the time to get into it, because there's going to be new industry that's going to be such a massive opportunity right now with voice. Anything that you want to do that you can follow the same trend as what happened with e-commerce and mobile, all those things are going to happen with voice. And the beauty about, or the challenge with voice is that it is very different than just taking in a business that focused on text search and converting that into voice. Those companies, it doesn't work like that. I think there has to be a voice-first mindset, because it is really, about understanding somebody's intent, which is a little different when you do voice as opposed to when you're doing a keyword search. So anybody who wants to get into it, there's a lot of opportunity right now. Amazon, Google, they are really going to help you build this thing, because they also want to get more and more adoption out there. So, I don't think it can be stressed enough how good of a time it is to get into this right now. And it's one of those things where it's one of the once in a lifetime kind of a thing. But yeah, that's it.
I'll also leave it with an opportunity that I've started to observe, which is UX designers, UI designers, interaction designers who have spent a lot of time developing and designing things for the screen, spend a lot of time thinking about micro interactions and how you give users feedback when they've performed an action that has been registered. So whether it's the change of a color of a button, the transition between screens, how do you know that your choice has been registered? That's largely absent from voice experiences today. So I think there's a huge opportunity for sound designers or UX designers, UI designers, interaction designers who have a sensibility for sound to play in that space and come up with paradigms that can be applied.
I'm sticking with audio branding, man.
All right. All right, awesome. Let's get a hand for our panelists and all our speakers. All right, thanks so much, everyone.